May the end of creation be born, so the old may rise again. What's up, guys? Uncle Punch here, and we are going to do a breakdown / review of Chapter 88 of Record of Ragnarok, which is known as, I don't know. I wish I was lying. The chapter title at least is not translated. So I got nothing. But what I do got is hype, liquid, smooth, buttery hype pumping straight through my veins. When I tell you this chapter is gas, it did things I wasn't expecting. You know it's bad when the live reaction's 41 minutes. I am scared for my computer because it's going to have to export what I know is about to be a long behind review. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? It's that guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to, oh shoot, have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. Have you ever thought about what happened before? Whatever happened before the creation that we know. What was before the Big Bang? Before the creation of our universe? What existed? Or rather, who existed? Have you ever wondered why you're here? Why I'm here? Why we all are here? Why in the infinite, ever-expansive cosmos with infinite possibilities and endless light years before us? Why, in spite of our best efforts, we have yet to find another planet even supporting the most basic of life? Not to talk of complex civilizations in a universe that is upwards of 13 billion years old, when life only evolved in a fraction of that time period. There's water. There are all the ingredients for life. There are even planets so similar to Earth that it'd be hard to fathom why there wouldn't be life there. Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever wondered why there's such a mystery about us, and why we are so inclined to chase that mystery, to discover it, why we, as thinking sentient creatures, are just as concerned with why we are here as we are with the fact that we are here? Have you ever wondered? Because I have. And of course, naturally, anybody would. Why be here? Why are we put here? Why do we exist? To serve some sort of higher purpose? Are we simply born of chaos, of darkness, of the incomprehensible probability of the grand calculus of the universe? Is that why we live and breathe today on this very special planet, in this very special solar system, in this very special galaxy, in this very special universe? Is that why? Well, I don't have the answers for you. I don't. I have my own ideas about it. Born of a conglomeration of many other ideas of many people before me, and who knows what kind of ideas will develop long after I'm gone. But we do have an answer for a certain world, or at least part of one. The world of Record of Ragnarok. Now, as I go into this history of these primordial gods, I want you to remember all these pantheons, whether it be the Greek, the Norse, the Roman, the Buddhist, the Hindu, they all connect. They were all born and coexist within this very same world. Remember this as we go in and we begin to ask questions about the answers we are currently receiving. Let's begin. In the beginning, the primordial gods are gods who were born from the chaos of the beginning. So, this already answers one interesting question. Well, actually, it raises the question by answering questions. Chaos. Chaos seems to be the universal birther of this continuity, pantheon, world, Record of Ragnarok. It was born of chaos. This is most similar to, at least it seems like statement-wise, it was born a similar phenomena to the Greek mythology, which of course, Greek seems to be the overwhelming pantheon of Record of Ragnarok. It is literally, I think, out of all mythologies, it's the most popularized in pop culture, unless you want to argue like Thor in Norse mythology through the MCU and stuff like that, and Marvel has become more popularized in Greek mythology, which I can definitely see the arguments for. Like, yeah, I can see the arguments for. It's either Greek or Norse, which works with why these two are the ones presented here. In terms of the statement, it reminds me a lot of the Greek creation myth, where there was just chaos. Sometimes chaos is personified as a being, like a being of chaos that kind of just poofs out of existence. But other times, the chaos was just chaos. It kind of just, there was primordial energies and boom, Gaia popped out. But of course, Gaia is not seemingly listed here nor mentioned. But, at least from the imagery, it almost seems like they're rising out of a primordial soup, a primordial water, the primordial sea. Now, this reminds me of Egyptian mythology, specifically because before there was creation in Egyptian mythology, I believe there were the waters of chaos, the seas of chaos. And those kind of were a little bit chaotic, if I do have to say so myself. And the thing about that chaos is that Atunra, or whichever creation deity, because there are a couple arguments because of the many interpretations of Egyptian mythology, came out of that water, then created the rest of everything. So visually, it reminds me of Egyptian mythology, but statement-wise, it reminds me of Greek mythology. Note, no Norse implications here, at least from what I can tell. Because if, once again, I may be misremembering because I haven't studied up on my mythology as of too recent, so I'm going off old memory. I believe in Norse mythology, in the beginning, there was Ymir. Actually, no, in the beginning, there was the Gimli Gap, which is actually kind of similar to this, I think about it. In the beginning, there's the Gimli Gap, which kind of acts as a primordial sea-esque thing, similar to Norse mythology, to Egyptian mythology, but then born from nothing, born from either chaos or nothing. I forget which one the Gimli Gap is. I need to brush up on my mythology. But Ymir was born out of that. And then Ymir was, I guess, the original Empreg, and then gave birth to many other creatures. And then those creatures turned around and slaughtered it in order to make the rest of creation. I'm thinking of Odin and his brothers. Now, of course, once again, I may be conflating Marvel mythology, Marvel Norse mythology, and original Norse mythology. I've not read either of the Poetic Eddas in like years. Like, it's legit at least been 4. So, I'm perfectly fine with being wrong, but I'm just interested with this creation myth having this kind of setup, especially considering the primordial gods themselves actually remind me, as we'll see on the next page, of another group of deities. One that has been addressed in Record of Ragnarok, though admittedly very, very, very briefly in 2 separate instances, I do believe. As it said here, they are the origin of the universe, the beginning of all creation, who once ruled the entire world. So, if y'all remember, now, let me know if you don't, brush up on the Greek mythology. And once again, I need to brush up on my own, so feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, which I probably will be. But, unless I'm misremembering, this is kind of the role that Titans filled, or at least the rulers of creation before the current rules of creation. Like, the whole thing about Zeus and his rebellion is that he took control away from Kronos and his species, the Titans, as the Titans gave birth to the gods. But, notably, this does not seem to happen here, at least not in the same way. As it's noted, nevertheless, the power of the primordial gods was so massive that they self-destructed. So, the primordial gods were extremely powerful, unbelievably powerful, undeniably powerful, but they were not built to handle their own power. That's interesting. Notably, at least for me, there are many different examples of beings absorbing power beyond their limits and their ability to contain it and comprehend. I'm thinking of spoilers. I'm also thinking of spoilers, and I'm also thinking of gosh, that's the thing. It usually happens towards the ends of narratives, and some of these narratives either will be animated one day or will never be animated, but I don't want to spoil anything. And I don't want to imply which series I'm talking about, because that in itself is a spoiler, because then you're going to be looking for it. But there are series where I've seen characters who absorb power that is not their own, and then they crumble to it, because their bodies are not able to handle said power. But this is also something that I've seen before, though admittedly the main example that comes to mind of one being born with power they cannot themselves withstand, Z Broly. If you remember, Z Broly, at least in the original movie, because he doesn't necessarily have this problem in Broly's Second Coming, he kind of just gets vaporized by the Kamehameha and thrown into the sun, and Bio Broly doesn't seem to have the issue either, but at least in the original movie, Broly had an issue where when he was in his legendary Super Saiyan state, he was generating so much ki, so much power, so much energy, that if he didn't consistently expel that energy, he was destined to explode. It's why when Goku hits him in that scar mark, that Broly doesn't just, split open and... No, like, the energy that he was barely containing within his flesh bursts out through the gaping wound and he detonates, wiping out a majority of the area. Which, once again, makes Broly second coming weird, because, like, doesn't he literally explode? But that aside, that's what this reminds me of. Except instead of detonating, at least by this visual, their self-destruction wasn't explosive, it wasn't chaotic, it wasn't massively destructive. It was decay-like. Like their bodies literally broke down. Which is interesting, notably because of the power that they wielded. And I wonder where that power went. Did it go and get spread out to the new gods? Because it's revealed that it's said that they return to the beginning of chaos from the Chronicles of Valhalla. So, these deities, in their self-destruction, not only lost control over creation, lost their lives, but apparently, in some way, shape, or form, their souls persisted. Unlike what happens in Record of Ragnarok, where, once you perish, you kind of just... At least in this arena, we're not sure how perishing works typically for the deities, but at least in this arena, once you're destroyed, your like whole being you're basically wiped from existence. Unless you're not. Note how they crumble here. How they burst with energy and they spark and break apart. Doesn't this look familiar to things that have happened in Record of Ragnarok before? Like to the gods or the humans who fell in the heavens? And what happened to the primordial gods when they broke apart like this from their own overwhelming power? They returned to the beginning of chaos. Intriguing. I wonder. I know that's like a very loose connection there, but it seemed interesting that at least visually, the decay of the old gods matches the decay of the creatures, or not the creatures, that sounds bad, the gods and the humans who fall in the tournament of Ragnarok. They all seem to possibly return to chaos, which is intriguing. I don't know, it caught me off guard when I first read it, which you can check out in live reaction over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or you become a member for as little as $3 a month to check it out. Bye-bye. But, with that being the case, intriguing. Very, very intriguing. Got me stroking my beard and asking questions. What could be transpiring in this very interesting moment? But, with it being the case, obviously, this is setting up for something, right? Like, you ain't just gonna drizzle this little tidbit that the gods, the primordial gods, just existed, vanished, and then creation was as it was. Interesting. Keep that in mind. As we see, that I'm assuming it's Buggy Boy quoting this to Odin in the presence of Buddha and the birds, who are currently chilling over here. This is a hard panel, though. This trio right here, kind of wild. Makes all your favorite verse, no lie. But we see that after Buggy Boy recounts that, Buddha even turns to him and is like, resurrection of the primordial gods. And, of course, while this does seem interesting to Buddha, he does have a sweat drop on him. And the birds, they're for the birds. We see as they go,
what the heck are you talking about? Aladdin, I can't do any other kind of voice.
I think I stole that voice from regular Pat, too. I've been corrupted. Lord, I stole Vexen, but admittedly that's from Kingdom Hearts. But it's because of regular Pat. I listened to so many Vexen clips over and over again. And now, he's infected me. I can't stop it. The voices. I'm going to start talking like regular Pat, too. Then again, I haven't seen a video of his in a minute. I think I saw his most recent video of, like, the best moment for every character in Kingdom Hearts. But I watched that when it came out. I haven't watched it again. What's wrong with me? I've been back on an Undertale kick. Undertale Yellow came out and threw my entire YouTube suggestion box off. But, sorry, back to the voice.
What the heck are you even talking about? Don't you know that the primordial gods are just legends? You're completely delusional. Why would Lord Odin wish for such a thing? There were ancient gods who once named themselves primordials. If we were to assume those primordial gods even exist, both the heavens and human world would have been annihilated.
This is interesting. So, This tackles multiple things that I like. Number one, I love it when ancient primordial beings or godly creatures within any narrative have legends and myths of their own. Because it goes to show even the higher powers are worried about higher powers. This is most cleanly and most recently outlined to me in God of War Ragnarok. The main, and ironically enough, it's another Odin. One of Odin's main concerns in that game, I guess, can I spoil? I guess it doesn't really count as a spoil. I think Odin's motivations are well enough known at this point. But in that game, Odin's very interested in just figuring out where he came from, why he exists, what's going on. Like, he doesn't fully get it. He doesn't understand where he came from, in the sense of what produced him. And he also doesn't get where he's going. Those are two things that we as people don't fully understand. Like, we as humans who transcend all fiction, we don't understand it. Like, sure, we know we were once egg and swimmer, and then boom, us, with like 9 months of development. But we don't fully understand that process. We can't fully replicate it, at least not like in the creation of like unique DNA. We don't even fully understand our own brain, and we don't necessarily get the concept of like individuality or free will or anything like that. It's consistently debated because it doesn't necessarily make sense in the laws of science. And we also, to this day, despite millions if not billions of lives being lost over many different time periods and many different causes, we still don't fully understand, if at all understand, what happens after we just cease the living, that is. We don't get it. We don't know. And I always find it interesting when higher beings, such as gods, such as characters like Odin or anything like that, are plagued with those same questions, those same fears, those same worries. Even if you are eternal and immortal, the one thing you'd be scared of is losing that immortality. And of course, if you aren't scared of that, the one thing you'd wonder is, if you were born that way, of course, maybe you would know if you became immortal. But why or what reason was I born this way? The questions would start to haunt you. And naturally, they kind of precede any narrative that does include deities. Of course, you typically just have this kind of answer, right? Like, oh, born from nothingness, born of chaos. Hey-ya! And that's usually it. But I love it when the stories go in and like start really asking these questions. And I love when the deities themselves are forced to face the fact that they may not be the originals. Now, the next thing I want to tackle is the idea that, I'm not sure which one is Hugin and which one is Munin, if these are the same crows that typically sit on Odin's shoulders. But the point here,
Earth and the heavens would have been immediately annihilated.
not necessarily. Once again, creation itself is something extremely complex. In the grand scheme of even human history, we're very, very short-lived. Like, remember, humans and mammals by proxy would have never risen to prominence if that meteor did not strike the planet. Let's be real. Humans would not exist. We wouldn't have been able to, based on how at least we understand the process of human events that transpired on Earth and the process of evolution itself. If the dinosaurs didn't get life wiped, humans, woolly mammoths, anything, like, we would never have become more than the tiny mammals we once were. Evolution would have never allowed that. Just because, well, we would kept getting natural selected to probably stay smaller and stay out of sight further. We may have eventually evolved, but it wouldn't be the humans we are today, or even Neanderthals, for example. Like, earlier species of humans would have existed without wiping first. So I think that's what probably happened here. Whatever ended up, well, in this case we know what it was based on this creation story, but it was the primordial gods who ended up being wiped out based on their own creation, because like they weren't able to handle their own power. So that may have just happened. The gods ended up falling apart, falling to pieces, and then laid the groundwork for the new gods to evolve. And then the gods created humans. It's as simple as that. That's at least how I view it being possible, similar way to how the dinosaurs being life wiped ended up with us existing, eventually, way farther down the line, due to the new availability that was left on the planet, the new opening seats left in creation. Now, this is interesting, because it comes to the question of, like, okay, we know we as humans evolved from, like, a very specific process, but if the primordial gods didn't create the new gods, where did the new gods come from? Right? Because, like, in Greek mythology, at least, it's explained that the Titans gave birth to the Olympians and the new set of gods. So they kind of just, like, evolved. Once again, evolution, but of course with ancient deities, meaning it didn't take place over millions upon millions of years. It was just, it just happened. And then for Norse mythology, Ymir just gave birth, and then Odin and brothers came out and were like, birth! We need a creation for ourselves, father, mother, and then just, tore them apart and bore creation and created everything else. Egyptian mythology, born of the sea, and then Ra, Atun Ra. Once again, I didn't brush my Egyptian mythology, but then birth, lots of birth. But I wonder what happened here. If the primordial gods didn't create the new gods, or are completely indirect, did they grow from the ashes of the primordial gods? Did they just spontaneously appear one day? Did they evolve from certain aspects of creation? Like, in some modern retellings, like, gods are legit manifestations of what they are. Like, Hephaestus, god of the blacksmith and forge, was born and is the blacksmith and forge. Like, he is the concept personified. And so on and so on. So I wonder if it's something like that, where creation, in an attempt to have itself be ruled in a way, kind of just birthed them. I don't know. Interesting. It's another part of the creation story of Ragnarok that I'm interested to see. Especially considering we know that gods are not always just born as gods. They tend to evolve into them. Like, Buddha wasn't a god at first. He evolved. Well, he was born unique. But then again, I think he evolved into one. And then Hercules wasn't born a god. He was born a man and then became a god. So the process for god birth is not necessarily uniform across pantheons or at all. So interesting. Very interesting stuff. The lore is juicy. However, with it being the case, we see that Buggy Boy keeps on pressing the subject. As he says, the primordial gods are just myths to us, the gods. I used to believe that too, until I found that forbidden book.
Huh? Forbidden book?
While I was researching about Natas, I just happened to find it in the back of the library. The library of the underworld. Interesting. So, it seems like Record of Ragnarok is taking an approach that's actually relatively common, at least in a lot of modern retellings and even some mythologies, where, like, the underworld? The dark spot? The place where all the non-living people go? Anything, those always tend to be the oldest. Like, they just tend to have some of the most ancient history and the most ancient being. Like, I know it's this way in Percy Jackson. I'm not sure if it's this way in Greek mythology. But, like, Nyx, a primordial, lives in the underworld. Like, in that general area. They are a subsect all to their own. So, I wonder if that's something similar here, where the primordials not just ended up returning back to creation, but, like, the underworld in creation itself, that was one of the more ancient areas, and then maybe the heavens and what we know as the human world were created later on. I don't know, intriguing. Allow me to take a sip, though. But, essentially, the underworld being an ancient place, very, very interesting, and I wonder what other secrets are hidden down there. But, with it being the case, we see that apparently this forbidden book is what described the existence of the primordial gods. As Buggy Boy says, the forbidden book describes the resurrection of the primordial gods. The Book of Gornir. And notably, look at Buddha's reaction. He's like, wait, what? And even the bird's like, wait, what? And we see Buggy Boy continues. That means the primordial gods really existed at some point, and someone knows how to resurrect them. It also means that those who forbid said thing also exist. So, this is interesting. Notably, I'm trying to think of an equivalent comparison. My brain rushes back to Percy Jackson, because of course it does. But that's intriguing. That's very, very intriguing. The idea that not only are the primordial gods real, but the possibility of their resurrection is also real. And there's a whole book about it. I wonder. Because notably, who wrote it? Was it the primordial gods that knew they were dying? And if so, how did they write it? How did they know to write a book to talk about their end and how to resurrect them, unless this has happened before? And that may play into a hypothetical time loop theory for Record of Ragnarok, because note, it's said that they returned to the beginning of chaos. The beginning. And what were they born out of? Chaos. So, I wonder, especially considering the whole idea of freeing ancient primordial beings by resurrecting them makes sense if the beings who sealed them or slayed them maybe wanted them back at some point, but who would write this? And which of the primordial gods, if they wrote this, would have done what they did? Because we see Buggy Boy doesn't stop there, as the birds go on to say,
who the heck would write such a book?
Obviously the primordial gods if they wanted to come back, but it's interesting that they'd even want to come back unless this resurrection included fixing their biggest problem. Because remember, the primordial gods didn't destroy each other. They self-destructed from their overwhelming power. So what? Did they just plan to resurrect and get destroyed and resurrect and get destroyed over and over and over and over and over again? Once again, I don't know. Maybe that's time loop theory. Maybe that's loop theory. I don't know. But I wonder what the primordial gods seek from being resurrected. Other than, living again. But they wouldn't be able to live for that long in their own time span, considering unless they got massively nerfed afterwards, they should just destroy themselves again. But we see that Buggy Boy, he's just come on now. I gotta press a couple allegations on a certain individual. Unfortunately, most of that forbidden book.
Ooh, bap, boop, bap, pow.
Okay, there we go. Most of that forbidden book was rotting away. Most of the pages were illegible. However, I found a passage inside. When the world tree absorbs the water of life, Odin of the twin eyes will offer his own body, and the world will return to its primordial state. Now, layers. I mentioned how it kind of looked like Greek mythology. Well, no, it looked like Egyptian mythology. It sounded like Greek mythology, and there seemed to be a lack of Norse. But this right here, when it comes to the resurrection of the primordial gods, reminds me of a certain something. A strange certain something. And it's the end of Ragnarok. Now, admittedly, there's a lot of debate. This all comes from overly sarcastic productions, by the way. So, I'm just not even quoting anything from my own knowledge. It's straight from them. But there's a lot of debate on whether or not this aspect of Norse mythology is real because of who was writing it down at the time. It's a certain group of people that came in and may have done some revisionist history. Because notably, after Ragnarok, what's described to happen is the rebirth of the world. Where, there's one supreme deity and then there were two people. And then repopulation and yada yada yada. Of course, that sounds very similar to another story, another belief system. But this reminds me of the idea that the world would just loop. This comes back to an idea that's consistently hinted at with Norse mythology, where it's kind of just an endless cycle, where it goes over and over and over again. And the return of the primordial state will then give birth to a new world, and then that world will eventually fall and then be reborn again over and over and over and over again. That seems like a concept introduced in Norse mythology, and it's heavily a part of Marvel Norse mythology, I believe. I think that's also a cycle where characters kind of just go through the lifespan, perish, and then come back and then do it all over again. So interesting that Odin is tied into this, especially considering, unless he's a hidden primordial, he should be one of the new gods, right? So how did the primordial gods, who most likely wrote this book, know about Odin? Unless Odin was born from them somehow and was meant to be this vessel. Because once again, I don't fully understand it. So I guess he's going to have to offer his body to the world tree in order to begin this process. And notably, what's the water of life in this context? Because once again, I haven't brushed up on my Norse mythology. Is there a water of life in there? I don't know. It's also interesting that this prophecy, or this ability to resurrect the primordial gods, seems to come directly from Norse. Or at least the runes are, I think these are runes. This seems like Norse writing in particular. So, what's the dealio then? Did Odin write this all himself? Is this some twisted delusion of grandeur type thing? Or is this actually accurate? And is the Norse technically the oldest pantheon, considering that's what this book was written in? And who forbid it? I don't know. Was it Odin, who didn't want anyone knowing about his motivations or his true goal or his true purpose? Or was it Zeus, who became the supreme deity and was like, I'm sorry, you want to do what? You want to do who? You want to do why? Nah, let's stop that. Because if you remember, in Greek mythology, I keep referencing different mythologies. And no, I know Record of Ragnarok has massively different takes on every single mythology that it ever does. Like, and I swear not a single thing is one-to-one from the common interpretations of old mythology. But, if you remember, I believe it was Metis who was going to continue the cyclic nature of what was meant to be Greek mythology, where the son will eventually overthrow the father and become the new ruler of creation. For Uranos and Gaia, it was Kronos, who was born of Uranos, who sliced Uranos apart with the scythe or the sickle, and then boom, then it was Kronos being taken over by Zeus, and then Metis was, I believe, going to give birth to someone, the son, that would overthrow Zeus. So what did Zeus do? Still laid with Metis, and then ate her when she turned into a fly, and then Athena was born instead. So, it's interesting. It's very intriguing. I wonder if it was Zeus in an attempt to stop a new cycle, just like he ended up stopping the new cycle in that version of Greek mythology by simply making sure his wife couldn't birth, at least not the boy, at least, or not his wife, make sure the woman he laid with didn't birth. I think it's possible. I think it's entirely likely that he was the one who forbade it, and he may know. But at the same time, he has such a low guard around Odin. If he knows Odin's true purpose, why is his guard so low? Unless he doesn't really know. And another thing is, why? I completely blanked on what the other thing was. And it's something to do with Odin. Something to do with Odin and his importance in all this. During Neutron, I completely forgot. If I remember it, I'll bring it back. But let's move forward as we see that Buddha's bamboozled. The birds bamboozled. And we see that Buggy Boy says, "It's been a long time since I read it, so it took me a while to connect the dots. Well, I may be delusional to think the content about the resurrection of the primordial gods is real, but isn't that forbidden book with your name written on it the answer to your long-cherished wish?" Yeah, that's what I meant to ask. Why? There we go. It's all come back to me. Why is this Odin's role, and why is he okay with it? Intriguing. I wonder, because is this Odin acting of his own free will, or was he programmed this way? Kind of similar to, spoilers for Guilty Gear Xrd, I do believe. Elfelt is a character introduced in the Guilty Gear series who has normal emotions, normal feelings, normal thoughts and thoughts process. She's a Valentine Gear, though, meaning she was born of the universal will. And universal will doesn't like humanity. So, essentially, what Elfelt was a sleeper agent, meant to operate throughout life normally, but had the true purpose that was only unlocked after certain conditions are met. So is Odin the same way? A sleeper agent planted by the primordial gods to eventually resurrect them, only when certain conditions are met, and those conditions being the weakening of the other pantheons? Because remember, now, Odin would have a much easier time overriding or overruling Zeus. Right now, Loki, Thor, and Odin are all still alive and well. Thor has likely long since recovered from the little damage he took in his fight. Loki hasn't even fought yet. And Odin also hasn't fought yet. 3 Norse powerhouses. And the Greeks have lost darn near half their pantheon. Both Poseidon and Hades have gotten got. Hercules has gotten got, leaving only Zeus and Apollo. And don't get me wrong, I assume Zeus and Apollo are extremely powerful. Apollo is strong, and clearly Zeus is strong, control over time itself, and the current supreme deity. But in a 3v1, or even a hypothetical 2v2, say if Loki were to perish, the odds look a lot more in his favor. So, did Odin have those specific criteria and conditions met, or was this simply his plan all along? Waiting for a scenario where the other pantheons would be weaker. Buddha is a lot weaker than he should be after the loss of his eye. Buggy Boy just went through an intense battle with Tesla, meaning he's weaker. Who else? Once again, like I mentioned, the Greek pantheon is suffering, going through it. Shiva got beat up a whole bunch, and we'll see later on in this chapter that his arms have been regenerated, but they're still wrapped up. He's still fatigued. Everyone's gotten weaker. Have the specific conditions been met for Odin's, I guess, like, true programming to awaken? I don't know. But that's what excites me. There's so much mystery, and that's what I love about Record of Ragnarok. I'll be real. I love the fights. I think the fights are great. I think the fights are neat. I think the fights are wonderful. But there are 2 things I like. I like it's the mystery, and I like the character work at Record of Ragnarok. Those are the 2 things that are Chef's kiss. Beautiful. Delicious, scrumdiddlyumptious, would nibble again. But, with it being the case, we see Buggy Boy's quite confident in his assertion. In fact, he goes on to say, come on now. Tell me the truth, Odin. Right? Go ahead and tell us about it, Mr. Odin. So he's begging for it. He's ready for smoke. However, he made a certain error. Once again, he may not have realized it, but Buggy Boy, you got a couple licks on you, bro. Wasn't your fight just too? I'm sorry, I got hair in my mouth. But that's the thing about having a mustache. I can't really say I have a mustache. That's the thing about having essence of a mustache. But we see that Buggy Boy, you must be a little tired, bucko. And also, you're Buggy Boy, holder of Natas. Who would come and save you? Who would really come and protect you? And Buddha, you as well. You know, you're kind of the whole deity. You're the only representative of your entire pantheon. So, I said, even really a pantheon? Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, who would miss you? Who would question it if you two were to just disappear? And we see Odin begins to turn it into Knuckles. Or the opposite of Knuckles. He's more Sonic. Because Knuckles don't chuckle. Because it's the... Tell us. You maggots are always like this. Where am I? Is this some sort of nest for little birds? And notably, Buggy Boy and Buddha go quiet, but focused. I am the Lord of Madness. I am the Lord of Rage. Interesting. Once again, I know the context for the deities are completely different from what I typically know them for. But I've never heard of Odin described as the Lord of Madness or the Lord of Rage. Intriguing. But we see Odin of the Twin Eyes merely cackles in the face of this challenge, of these demands. And he says, you bunch of fools, disappear. So, in this moment, Odin was about to wipe him. Like, they were straight cooked. Like, I ain't gonna lie, I have faith in the Boots, and I have faith in Buggy Boy. Clearly, two powerful combatants. They won their battles. Buggy Boy quite definitively, and Buddha also not too definitively, but still pretty definitively. But, considering they're both fatigued, Odin's perfectly fresh, and has his sacred treasure, seemingly soaked in malice, yeah, they were cooked. I'm not gonna lie. If Odin was moving for it, he was moving for it, which is interesting, meaning he does not fear the consequences. But like I said, I do think that comes from the fact that Buddha's the sole representative of his pantheon, and Buggy Boy isn't necessarily that well liked. So, I think he legit could have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for that meddling kid. As we see, before Odin can strike, and notably, we see Buggy Boy raise the staff up, which makes sense. Once again, that's his weapon. Buddha, you're barehanded, Buggy. What did he think? What is he gonna cook with those bare hands? You have blind too. Where's your depth perception at, Bucko? It's not there. But we see that lightning strikes around Odin. And even Odin's like, what? What's going on here? And we see a certain man strolls up. What are you doing here? Stomping, moving forward, lightning bolts called down. And once again, it feels, I don't know, and this is a critique I do have for Ragnarok. And I get it, because, you can't have the gods have too many powers, or else how are the humans meant to beat them? But the humans have powers too, so might as well give them. Thor feels like the only character to actually somewhat fit his mythological designation. Like, he's the only one to actually tap into some of his mythical powers. And I do love the way he uses electricity here as sort of like a caging function to hold off his father and to sort of lock down the strike path towards his opponents. And we see the birds start to freaking geek because they realize while Buggy Boy and Buddha may have been cooked, they're even easily more cooked if Thor is showing up.
Big Daddy Thor, please don't slap your meat on the table. I'm begging you.
Thor, Scandinavia, looking clean and buttery as ever. Oh, But I'm sorry. I love Thor. Once again, I do think his fight is one of the weaker ones. Like, while my opinions have changed on some of the fight rankings, I do need to do my fight rankings, considering those are like 3-year-old videos now. I will admit, he's still clean. And I was definitely waiting for him to get some more screen time to do a bit more, and to see him finally pull up and get ready to cook. Oh, I excited. My toes are curling. I would put him on, but like, no. Even I don't trust the internet that much. But with it being the case, Thor from Scandinavia pulls up, and note where he decides to pull up to and stand.
Lord Thor! Please, don't fry us. We don't taste good, I promise.
Thor steps in between Odin, who's still wielding gun gear quite normally, with Mjolnir over his shoulder, the gloves back on, Mjolnir sealed back away, but he stands in between Buddha, Buggy Boy, and Odin. He essentially acts as a third party, a mitigator between the two groups. However, his back is to his father, showing which group he trusts more and which one he's still decisively standing against. And both Buddha and Buggy Boy realize, okay, this may have just gone from possibly survivable to we may actually die. Because, like, don't get me wrong. Whoa, what you mean you ain't charging? What do you mean you ain't charging? Like, really? This always happens. I swear this always happens. Yep, now it's charging. Gosh darn it. But essentially, while I do have faith in both Buddha and Buggy Boy as quite powerful combatants, and I could definitely see them, even with Buddha being barehanded at the moment, and Buggy Boy being fatigued, possibly, I could see them putting up a decent fight against Odin, even while Odin's fresh, because once again, we don't know Odin's power, and the cross-pantheon scaling, and even the cross-battle scaling in Ragnarok is really, really weird, because, like, they don't really co-link and interconnect, even amongst the Greek pantheon, which seems crazy, but, like, you can make some assumptions about the Greek pantheon scaling. You can easily argue Zeus should be the strongest, Hercules should be the weakest, and then the other three kind of fall somewhere in between. Hades should probably be the second strongest, then Poseidon, and then I assume Apollo, but once again, entirely unknown. But with that being the case, if Thor, who had probably at least hours, like 2 at least, to heal up from his fight, and he didn't take too much damage in that, and he has his full sacred treasure, meanwhile Buddha's down his sacred treasure, and Buggy Boy's fatigued, alongside a completely fresh Odin, yeah, this battle was not going to be winnable, not in the slightest. No way on this good green earth was it going to be winnable. But with it being the case, we see that Thor isn't actually here to do much, as Odin says, "Thor, stay out of my way." Meanwhile, Thor hits the ellipses. And he's like, "Who do you think you're talking to, Bobs? Do you really think you're that guy?" And we see that Thor doesn't actually respond to him, but Buddha does speak up. "What's up, little Thor? You didn't come here to help Din, did you?" Which once again implies that Buddha thinks he could give him smoke, but I don't know, Buddha. I got faith in you, dog, but not that much faith. But we see that Thor explains, "I'm not trying to help anyone. However, allow me to say one thing. The pride of the warriors who fought in that arena, I will not allow it to be tarnished by anyone." He's so cool. He slid up spots. This one moment here slid him up numerous spots in my God ranking list. Thor has grown respect for both humans and gods. Specifically, though, look at the main focal points of the people he's laid out here. Of course, you see Hades, and of course, you do get Hercules here, and obviously, you see Poseidon. But that's what, 3 deities? Right here, it's Kin, it's Tesla, it's Raiden, it's Sasuke, it's Adam, and it's the man who inspired Thor himself to make him realize the potential and power of humanity, Lubu. Thor respects conflict. He respects battle. He respects that everyone who showed up to the battle came ready to risk their lives and leave it all behind, leave it all on the battlefield. And essentially, right now, what Thor is reading this whole scenario as, a hypothetical fight between the deities of Buddha, Buggy Boy, and Odin, is disrespect to the entire rest of the tournament. Because essentially, Odin will be weakening himself for later, even if he didn't have to exert himself all too much. Buddha and Buggy Boy have already fought, for one. And two, there's a whole match going on right now. There's no reason there should be inter-god conflict, especially over something that's so uncertain. Something that, well, obviously is confirmed, isn't really confirmed, right? So he's laying down his gauntlet. He believes there should be definite respect placed on this conflict here, which makes sense, I really, really like, and goes to add layers to his character and the impact that Record of Ragnarok is having on these deities, or Ragnarok itself is having on the deities, which I do like. Once again, I'm glad that every single god is coming away with a new respect for humanity, and I'm glad that every single human is coming away with a new respect for the gods, or at least the god they fought. Good stuff, good stuff. And we see that Odin, Buddha, and Buggy Boy all begin to relax slightly, as they're all caught off guard by Thor's statement. But notably, none of them go to attack in spite of whatever disrespect or lack of respect they may have for Thor. And we see that Thor continues his statement. And in fact, not even really statement, he basically gives an order. Until this Ragnarok is finished, life and death will be decided on the arena. That is the courtesy that we, as warriors, must show to our fallen enemies. That is nice. That is nice. It adds layers to Thor, because not only is this an aspect of human respect, like, the opponents are humans, right? So if he disrespected them, he wouldn't care about them fighting, whatever. So it shows his respect for humans, for one, but two, it shows that Thor genuinely does have a respect for conflict, for battle, where he's like, do not fight. Right now, do not fight to slaughter each other, to end each other, because right now there are actual battles going on that are determining the fate of the world. We should focus on that. We should allow that to transpire. But he is admitting afterwards, it's fair game. It's fair game. Afterwards, once Ragnarok is concluded, while out to your heart's content, bucko. That's essentially, he's soft saying that. He's laying that out there. He's like, right now, no need to throw hands. But once that final bell tolls, once whoever wins that final Record of Ragnarok round, once it's decided if humans live or will not live, I'm not going to stop you. In fact, I may join in on the battle itself. So that's good. This does multiple things. Well, actually, I'll let this wrap up before. Because we see that Buddha says, never heard of that before. Fine then, little Thor. Would you look at that? Little Thor is a surprisingly hot-blooded dude, huh? Alright then. I got it. I'll stand down. So Buddha agrees. He agrees to the condition. Oh, yeah, sure. We wait. I'm patient. Forget about all that. But we got it. And Thor raises his weapon to his father. Isn't that right, father? So he's ready to throw hands. When we even see both of them look at each other. And we see the birds are like, please don't spread me. But Odin even stands down. He's like, okay, I'll fine. But I like this because it goes to show that either A, Odin does respect his son enough to be like, fine, I'll honor your request. I see what you see in those people, those humans. We'll let it rock. Or B, he has a little bit of fear of Thor. Because Thor did raise his weapon to him. He did not immediately stand down at his request like Buddha did. He had to have the weapon raised to him and enter a standoff with his son before he ended up standing down. Maybe a little bit of both. Regardless, I like what that adds to that character dynamic. Good stuff. I love the character right here. But what this also does, with this battle being laid down until after Ragnarok, it basically soft confirms what a lot of people had been low-key wondering. It's one of two things. A lot of people either believe that A, Ragnarok wouldn't actually get to be completed. We would not get to see all 13 battles pop off. It would be cut short. But that may deconfirm this. What it may reconfirm, though, is the idea that once the 13th round is over and humanity wins or humanity falls, the story's not going to finish. There's going to be more. There's hypothetically going to be an interpantheon war. Where if humans lose, maybe the gods fight over that. Or if humans win, maybe the gods fight over that. And that excites me so much. The one thing, okay, there are a couple of things, but a major thing that I'm a little bit sad about with Record of Ragnarok is that it feels like a lot of the gods don't necessarily get to have too many interactions. Even the humans get kind of reduced to standing around or sitting around after their fights are done. But the hypothetical interesting matches that could come about from an inter-god, inter-human conflict that's unbound by the laws of Ragnarok is intriguing. So soft confirming that this could happen, we may actually get to see Buddha and Buggy Boy versus Odin, Thor possibly being a wild card for either side, Loki cooking in whatever way Loki decides to cook. There's so many different possibilities that are opened up here that I'm infinitely excited. But we see that Buggy Boy is not about to let this slide. Don't mess with me. This story isn't over yet. Because, of course, Buggy Boy, he's super interested in the information now. Essentially, now that he's had it confirmed that Odin has alternative motivations and that text he read so long ago is valid, now he wants answers from the one guy who can actually give him answers, and he's willing to fight for it. As he says, I'll make you listen, even if I have to use force. But a certain someone appears. Enough! Oh, is something wrong, Buddha? Two people show up. Adamas and Kintoki. As we see, the standoff is quelled. I do love this spread here as well. I love Adamas standing behind Buggy Boy and Buddha, perfectly fine, masked up, and I love Kintoki standing behind Odin and Thor. Once again, a man and a god coming in to shut down this conflict. They showed me powerful man and note the battle damage on him, at least a little bit of it, and Adamas, who's perfectly crisp and clean. But we see the interference of these two is enough to at least quell battle tensions of Buggy Boy. And notably, Thor does have the hammer at hand, though. He was ready to give Buggy Boy the work. But we see that Buggy Boy goes on to say, don't get in my way, Adamantine. If you even attempt to interfere, I will erase you. And based on the fact that Buggy Boy did blitz Adamas from like halfway across the room when Adamas went to strike Brunhild, yeah. Oh yeah. If Adamas really did try and fight Buggy Boy, that would be a fight he is destined to lose. Like 100%. Like Buggy Boy literally rebuilt Adamas. So like, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This would not be a fight. However, Adamas isn't here for a fight. In fact, he's here for quite the opposite. As he says, well, no, he doesn't just say, he quotes, Don't tarnish the godly dignity Mr. Hades has shown. You're the one who told me to do such a thing. Don't cause too much trouble when the trouble's not worth it. That's what he said to Adamas or Adamantine when Adamantine was about to strike down Brunhild for her insolence, as he had put it. So now the script is being flipped back on Buggy Boy. As he says, you're the one who told me to do such a thing. And we see Buggy Boy's aura, which I do love. I love seeing the sound aura start to flare up around him. Starts to simmer down a bit. And even when it doesn't completely stop, Adamas does something interesting. Very, very interesting. It looks like he begins to break the weapon that Hades gave Buggy Boy, which is intriguing. As Adamas says, you're usually cool as the ice of the underworld. You're the gloomy lord, Buggy Boy. But don't be a clown. You idiot. He risks breaking his own hand on the staff of Buggy Boy, but you can tell how low his aura's gotten, considering one cracks are starting to appear on the staff itself, and also the fact that Adamas is able to come in contact with it at all. And we see Buggy Boy. He goes to speak back, but he calms himself. He shuts himself down, and he's like, fine. He lowers his guard, and he shuts up. Well, shuts up sounds mean. He doesn't shut up, he just stops. And we see that Odin, once again, he acquiesced to Thor already. He was ready to defend himself, obviously. You can tell he was ready for smoke. But he was like, fine. And he begins to walk away. But with that situation defused, Buddha goes back to what he asked Kintoki. Hey there, Kinshan! And then Kintoki's like, ugh, you never stop moving, do you? And we see as Odin walks past Kintoki, he actually looks at him. Looks at him quite hard, too. Now, the question here is Odin looking at Kintoki because he recognizes the battle damage and has a solid guess to where he's been? Not necessarily, because we do get told exactly why Kintoki's being glared at this. I completely forgot for a second, but we get told. As we see that Buddha walks up to Kintoki as Thor and Odin walk away, and he says, "Good timing!" And Kintoki's like, "Really? Is that so? What's up with the old man? Was he that scared of me was he that scared of me? I don't know, he was glaring at me really hard." And we see that Buddha said, "Oh, no, that's just Odin. I think maybe he didn't like that I told you that I told him you were exploring Tartarus." That's the main reason that Odin's likely mad. But who knows, maybe he recognizes something in Kintoki. But we see that, I love how his eyes bulge out. He's like, "What? Why would you tell him that? Gosh darn it, well, this is going to be my end anyway. Whatever. However, I am done with the underworld." "Oh, is that so? How are things down there?" We see that Kintoki, he came out a little bit beat up. As he says, "It was no good, you see. The guards in Tartarus are demonically tough. I'm never going to be able to break in and make contact with that prisoner god." If you don't remember, that's Sigurd, Brunhild's boyfriend. And we see that Buddha goes on to say, "I see how it is. I feel like I want to meet Siggy even more now." So, that's another interesting aspect. Sigurd, the only seemingly true demigod, he's the only one that's ascribed to literally be half human, half god, unlike Hercules, who was a human made a god. Intriguing. Very, very intriguing. I do wonder what his role is in all this. That's the thing. There's so many plot lines being set up for a hypothetical post-Ragnarok event that I'm really interested to see. Like, what is going to allow Sigurd to be broken free? Obviously, we don't know the upper strength limit of Kintoki, but the fact that he went down there and the guards down there were like, me, even if he was outnumbered, the fact that he's one of the strongest humans, one of the ones chosen to represent humanity, and even still, he was just pushed back? Intriguing. But we see that he says, nope, like I said, I can't do it, I'm not doing all that. But we see Buddha's like, "Yeah, you say that, but why don't you tell me the details as we nibble on some of that good." And we see Kintoki, I keep trying to say his first name, but I think I'll just go with Kintoki. Kintoki's like, "Dude, another hit of that good. You really like that stuff, don't you? You're gonna get cavities, you know?" And we see that Buddha's like, whatever. I'll brush my teeth, I'm good. Besides, we got that good healing tech up here, I'll be fine. But we see that Buggy Boy, he's not leaving here with nothing. He came here to get something. As he says, well, no, Buddha says to him, "Alright, Buggy Boy, bye-bye." We see that, I think I actually said his name. I'm not sure if I just said his name. Gosh darn, I keep trying to avoid it. But we see that Buggy Boy hits him with, "Buddha, don't you hate me?" And Buddha's like, "Where's this coming from? Hate you? But I barely even know you." And we see that Buggy Boy just decides to drop it. He's like, "You know already, don't you? The one who planted that Hajun seed in Zero Fuku. It was me." We see, and I love how he presents it here. He's like, look at this guy. You should have your hatred ramped up towards me. You know it. It's me. Do it. Do it right now. But we see, and then even Adamas is like, hey, whoa. We literally just de-escalated a conflict. There's no need to start another conflict. But we see that Buggy Boy, he does not stop. He goes on to say, "You must hate me so much that you want to tear me apart and slaughter me. Isn't that so?" And we see Buddha hit the ... And then he strolls up to Buggy Boy. Notably, I do find it hilarious that Sataka and, I keep switching back to his base name, Kintoki and Adamas don't even do anything. They just let him square off. And we see that Buddha hits him with the, "That's the story, huh?" So he reaches behind him. He pulls out that kablammer. And notably, that's interesting. I wonder if he can still summon the sword from it. I don't know. But we see his eyes open up. He swings down. Buggy Boy closes his eyes, finally ready for that sweet release. And he gets whacked over the head. Notably, Natas doesn't even come out to actually, no. Yeah, I don't think Natas comes out to actively defend him or anything either here. Because I think Natas even you ain't in danger. But we see Adamas is shocked. Kintoki is shocked. And even Buddha, he's not shocked. But Buggy Boy just hits the, what the? What the heck? What? And we see Buddha hits the, well. Is this enough? He entrusted this to me. And Buggy Boy's bamboozled. He's like, what? What are you yapping on about? What in the world is going on? And we see Buddha explains, hey, I'm gonna level with you real quick, dog. I'll be completely real. The Zero was the one who taught me that it's inevitable that hatred will rise in the heart. But if I allow my hatred to get the better of me, it'll be the same as betraying Zero. Which is, I love it. I love the fact that these characters who left are still having impacts on the characters that they fought so thoroughly. That Buddha's fundamental mindset has changed. Even though he may hypothetically despise Buggy Boy for setting up Zero Fuku in that way, he's still more than okay with it. Or at least allowing himself to be okay with it. Because of the lesson that he learned. Not even the lesson that he learned. Because of his conversation and impact and conflict with Zero Fuku. That ended up changing his perspective enough that he can't find himself to hate Buggy Boy, or at least not hate him enough that he's gonna like tear him limb from limb, which is great. But we see that Buddha immediately says, we'll walk down the path of light together. That's what I said. That's the promise I made to Zero. And that's the reason why I don't hate you. We see, yeah, so he flat out doesn't hate him. He doesn't let the hate even bubble up in his heart. And we see that Buggy Boy just goes quiet. He's like, darn it! he's just straight up mad. Because he's like, I thought someone was going to get me today, but first, Tesla couldn't do it. Now the one other guy who possibly could. But we'll see. We'll talk about that in a second. We see that Buddha looks down longingly at the hills of the blade. Which I do wonder. I genuinely wonder if he can reform that blade. Because I thought it was like a byproduct of Zero, and then Zero ran off. But maybe he can still reform that sacred treasure. And in that case, it makes more sense why he was so confident earlier on in the chapter to properly throw hands with Buddha, and even not Buddha, Odin, and even hypothetically Thor, while he had Buggy Boy on his side. Because these are some of the more powerful characters in the series, at least presumably. But with that being the case, we see that Buggy Boy says, you are truly a very complicated guy in the end. Which is nice. Once again, we love character complexity. Even Buggy Boy is like, oh, gosh darn it, these complex characters. How dare they? How dare they be complex and not one note? But we see he grips his staff, but he puts it away. And he begins to walk off. And he says, but maybe, someday, if you feel like it, you can come back and take my life. You probably would be able to do it. So, once again, we're dipping our toes. First we were hitting at it, but now we're getting some more definitive cross-verse scaling. Buddha is, or at least cross-pantheon scaling, in terms of inverse scaling. I'm sorry, it's so weird. But at least, based on his performance, even after the nerf, Buggy Boy believes that if him and Buddha were to square down in a battle to the end, it's possible that Buddha could win. He says probably, though. So there's still a chance that Buggy Boy could win. But that's good. It goes to show these two are in a generally the same tier of power. And notably, look at Buddha. He doesn't even really deny it. He's just like, you're a weird guy. So that's interesting. Buggy Boy versus Buddha. The two big Bs. They're in a comparable power league, which is intriguing. But with that being the case, we see that Buggy Boy and Adamas go to stroll off. And Adamas even asks, what? Allow me to say it. But you could have just said you don't hate him. Oh, wait, actually, no. He turns to Buddha and asks this. He says, allow me to say, you just said you don't hate him. Yeah, you punched his head. What was that for? We see Buddha goes quiet, and he's like, my bad. That was just my little teenage rebellion. And Adamas is like, is this guy fearless or something? But at the same time, what? It's clear that Buggy Boy didn't even want to fight back. He wanted to get God. So, come on now, Adamas. Read the room. But we even see Kentucky being like, nothing can bother this guy. And they all laugh it off. Like the end of a Disney Channel episode. These characters will all fall. They will fight. But, with that being the case, we finally cut back to the actual battle. Going all the time. It's unfortunate. Hopefully this won't mar down the battle all too much more. I'm afraid of what happened to Raiden and Shiva, where a lot of that battle sort of got lost to, a more interesting plot line in the whole Traitor Buddha plot line. I'm hoping that we just focus on Soji versus Susanoo from now on, because this is the fight I've been waiting for. I'm excited. But we see, at the same time, in the Valhalla arena, The audience was engulfed in a strange silence. We see blades are clashing. The world they fight in itself is falling apart. And we do get a notable face here. Shiva, once again. Let me see that top arm, buddy. Yeah, both of them are back. So he's fully regenerated his arms at this point, but they're still wrapped up. So he's still healing a bit, but he's well enough that he's out of that little meditating chamber, and now he's back, at least in the proper arena, watching the fight. And we see that Soji and Susanoo are exchanging blows. But once again, I want you to pay attention to the seriousness on both of their faces, or the lack of such on one face. Soji is very clearly locked in. His face is cloaked in shadow, and he swings his blade with purpose. Meanwhile, Susanoo is, I'm not going to just say vibing out, but he's not going all too crazy. And we see this pattern continues. Brunhild is cheering. Gear is cheering. Jack and his Valkyrie are kind of just chilling. But notably, Soji and Susanoo are swinging relatively evenly, but once again, the lightness on Susanoo's face versus the dark focus on Soji's face, and the lack of a smile versus the gigantic smile on Susanoo's. They're swinging, but it's clear that Susanoo's encompassing fighting style is pretty much the superior here. We see Susanoo goes for an upswing, an arcing swing that knocks Soji back. Soji uses the fact that Susanoo's guard is now open to spring off the building and lunge in towards Susanoo. However, Susanoo, once again using his mastery of the blade, already anticipated this and weaves backwards from the step and notably flips the grip of his blade, where before you can see the white of the blade, the striking side is up, the blade immediately gets flipped down and the striking side is back. Actually, wait, I may be completely wrong on the striking side versus the dull side, but this looks like the striking side. Alright, maybe not. But he then forces Soji to whiff. He steps back away. Soji flips his grip and then immediately activates Ruben Ken, Dragon Tail Sword, swinging a smooth arc to do some sort of damage to Susanoo. But then Soji notices that Susanoo used the fact that his blade was still up from this upswing, that he flipped the blip grade and the blade grip in his hand to reel back and swing down on Soji, who had to immediately upturn away from his slash. Instead of the arcing upward swing, he had to immediately right his wrist to block the downward swing and parry it. But notably, he couldn't parry it perfectly and step back in time, so he does get slashed here across the face, through his cloak, and his tassels. So, oh wait, actually, are those... Oh no, Susanoo's tassels get cut here. So they are showing some sort of relativity, but I do think Susanoo's mostly in control throughout the battle. And we see, even the bystanders are like, wow, I have no idea what is going on, but it's something amazing. Oh, what an epic sword fight. Those two are awesome, don't you agree? That's the god of the sword and the demon child fighting to the end. So, they both managed to land hits, but obviously Susanoo's is actually a flesh wound. Meanwhile, Soji's is kind of just like a tassel wound. The differences are clear. Susanoo very clearly has the edge. But I'll give credit. I'll give a lot of credit to Soji. He didn't immediately fold, which is something that I probably would have done. Gosh darn it, that's a lot to fight against. But we see that Heimdall explains,
Susanoo Shinya Ryozu, Swallow Lokita Soji's sword strikes that wield a godly speed.
So, once again, even Heimdall's able to recognize, yeah, it's a close, intense battle, but right now, even with the godly speed, the Yayorozu is swallowing, consuming Soji's fighting style. And we see that the layers of this fight are endless, as we broke down.
And Okita Soji counterattacks even to that, but Susanoo dodges the counterattack and attacks even further. That's the clash between the strongest God Slayer and the strongest Man Slayer. This is the big time of the bloody battles between swords.
Yeah, this will be probably our last, if not ultimate, sword fight, and it's great to see these two be decisively relative. I was very concerned for Okita, to say the very least, when last chapter he was looking, I'm not going to say he was looking fraudulent or anything, but he was looking the best. Let's put it that way. He was not looking the best last chapter. He seemed to be in very, very dangerous scenarios when he used, supposedly, according to his crew, his definitive strike, and then I'm not going to say immediately got no-sold, but kind of immediately got no-sold. It was looking tragic, to say the very least. But while he is clearly at the disadvantage, he's not so much at the disadvantage that I'm worried that he's gonna get got anytime soon. He's still relative enough. He's not totally fodder. But with that being the case, we see that, as Hermes says, I don't even want to get distracted, even if it's for an instant. Big Brother is so surprised. His soul left his body. So yeah, Ares is just blown away by this transcendent display of swordsmanship. Meanwhile, Zeus is like, I'm like Sonic, I don't chuckle. And I don't wield blades either. I'd rather flex my muscles. I'm hard as nail. It ain't hard to tell. You can't even beat me if it's Sonic or Tail. Like, he says, swords are also cool, but what I really want are fists. And he flexes. And I will admit, let me take a sip. There we go. You're back on. But I do find that funny. Notably, Zeus himself typically is depicted as just throwing lightning bolts, but Zeus doesn't even seem remotely associated with lightning in this continuity, at least. So it does make sense that he prefers his fighting style. But with that being the case, we see that they aren't the only ones enraptured with the fight. Yeah. Anubis is a fiend for it. What voice do I really give Anubis? I am so hyped. I can barely wait. That's just so amazing. Man, I knew I shouldn't have given up my turn. I can't get enough of that human. It's floating all the way up here. The best smell of all. The best and the strongest. The smell of death. So, it seems like Soji knows he's on the verge. He's very much on the verge of falling here. And right, because notably, Anubis mentions he can't get enough of that human. Soji's the one on the back of it. Soji's the one releasing that potent scent of death. And of course, remember, Anubis is the god of the dead. So of course, he'd be the one who could tell, because it's his job to gather them. Remember, well, no, not the god of the dead, the god of death. Hades and Osiris for Egyptian mythology is the god of the underworld, the god of the dead. But in terms of death itself, who's meant to embody that concept? For Greek mythology, it's Thanatos. I forget the name for the Roman variation. And for Egyptian mythology, it is Anubis. So it does make sense that he's the one who's able to tell. And I wonder, like, what are the gods of death's role in this sort of tournament? Like, for Anubis and for Brain, and for Thanatos, I wonder what they feel, considering I don't think they're responsible for banishing the human and or god, whichever dies first. I don't think they're responsible for banishing their soul from existence. I think they just witness it. So I wonder how they feel. It seems like Anubis is excited, but I wonder. With that being the case, we see that Musashi Miyamoto is like, ooh, he is intercepting every single slash with that Shinra Yaoyorozu. A frightening posture indeed. And we see that Sasaki says, hey, as far as the eyes we can see, every single one of them is there. That god Susanoo has mastered all sword techniques in all schools created by mankind throughout history. He can comprehend them all. And honestly, if we're being real, perhaps he reached the peak of all those styles. Which is crazy. But it makes sense, right? God of Swords. If he's gonna fully embody that concept, it makes perfect sense that he would be able to wield everything that was ever created. As, in a way, it was all born of him, or at least would return back to him. Kind of in a... That's a spoiler. Gosh darn it! I need the rest of that anime to get animated already. Hurry up, part 3. Or whatever part's on. But with that being the case, we see that Sasaki's Valkyrie is like, Sword God. He's more like a metamorphic sword. Which makes sense, because he's adapting to everything Soji does, using the many styles he knows. But we see that Sasaki hits the, I can't get enough of it. Now, let's see how you win against that god. Show me. The strongest of the Edo period, Okita Soji. Poor Kashima Hajime. But, with it being the case, we see that Usano's impressed. He's like, Yoriyubi Ken from a moment ago was an amazing technique. It was majestic. And we see even Soji's like, I won't lie. You were gonna chop my arms off in that counterattack. How can you say that? That was so cool. I'm having so much fun here. So yeah, Yeah, in the end, this still is, while it is a battle that determine the fate of humanity, it is a battle where Soji's risking his very life. It's a battle that is super duper dangerous, and most individuals wouldn't be able to begin to comprehend the chaotic feelings and emotions that would go behind it. Soji was a man who didn't even get to go out on his own terms. So of course he's super enraptured with the battle itself, that he's finally able to meet someone who's able to make him go all out, make him evolve, one-on-one in a battle of blades to this level. And I do love that. And we see even his own crew is like, huh, Soji sure is enjoying himself out there. If he loses concentration even for a second, he'll perish instantaneously, you know? And we see, Isami Kondo says, I doubt he's even afraid of death at this point. Every day was a battlefield. Death was always next to him. For us, the Shinsengubi, fights to the death were our everyday life. And we see that Susanoo's like, well, you're still laughing. That's why you're the captain of the first unit of the Shinsengubi, the one and only Okita Soji. And we see that Soji, while he does appreciate the respect, he knows what's going down. He knows what has to be done. And he says, well, no, the narrator goes on to say, against the infinite positions of the sword gods Shinra Yayorozu, the stance of the smiling demon child was formless. Bro hits the... So you know he's about to lock in. And we see that people begin to question, what's that? He's lowering his guard? No way, is he giving up? And we see that Musashi, I'm not trying to say his name. I know he literally has a whole manga dedicated to him. Not from this author, I don't believe. But like, I know Vagabond. I think it's Vagabond. But we see he asks, is that the formless stance of Yagyu Shinran Ryu? And we see, I'm not going to try it. Sasaki says, nope, it's similar, but that's not correct. It's possible it's not a form learned from somewhere else. In order to survive the heck of the Shinsengumi period, or the Bakamatsu period, he naturally acquired through fighting to the death with many samurais of the period. That's what I believe. Naturally? Yeah. We see Okita Soji, he begins to move forward. He begins stepping. He begins looking up at Davies as he starts that motion. And we see Susanoo says, would you look at that? I'm loving this. This is about to get wild as all get out. And we see Soji says, me too. Here I go. And we see even Susanoo with a big old grin on his face still. But even Susanoo's like, whoa, the air around me has changed. This piercing sword pressure. And instantly, boom! Soji starts moving, bobbing, weaving, basically leaving after images. Even Susanoo's like, wait a minute, what's happening? I can't read them. And Soji, reeling back for what looks like a slash, immediately goes in for a pierce, which Susanoo dodges and manages to deflect. And we see that Susanoo even admits, I couldn't even see what was just happening. And Soji does not relent. He goes from the slash to downward pressure on Susanoo's blade here, then immediately turns that downward pressure into an upward slice towards Susanoo's face, which Susanoo redirects using his sword to push Soji down, only for Soji to release the momentum and charge back in. And we see Sasaki reveals the one aspect that he has, the one aspect that Soji has over Susanoo in this fight. There's one thing that Soji has that surpasses that god. That's his countless near-death experiences. We see the fever in Soji's face as he pushes forward, strikes against Susanoo's arm with the hilt of his blade, and swings with Soji Okita's sword. A slash. And it looks like he even draws some juice this time. It seems like he actually manages to land a hit on Susanoo. Unless Susanoo ended up hitting him, and this ends up being a twist. But that is the end of the chapter. That is one thing I do like, though, before I wrap this up, because it's being on for super duper long. But I do like that the difference in their births and the difference in their roles in life allows for this difference in ability, the ability to improvise and adapt on the fly. Essentially, what Sasaki's pointing out here is that due to the fact that, I'm not going to say, I wouldn't lie and say that Susanoo had an easy life. I don't know enough about his mythology, or this interpretation of Susanoo's mythology. But he was born a powerful deity. He had that role from birth, and thusly he likely wasn't challenged all too often. He wasn't really forced to evolve. In fact, he was the god of swords, so it all probably came naturally to him. Meanwhile, for someone like Soji, he had to keep him rising. He had to do everything he could to survive. There were no easy shortcuts. There were no easy paths. There was nothing he could walk down. Nothing was given to him. So this formless style that he evolved to adapt makes sense, and why it would catch Susanoo off guard, because it's entirely Soji's. It wasn't taught to anybody else. It's all unique to him. At the same time, I assume Susanoo will recognize it eventually and figure out how to counter it. But overall, you couldn't tell by my domain expansion, Horizon of the Captivating Yapper, this is definitely a W chapter. Amazing, amazing on every single level. You know, I gotta love the world building in this chapter. From the lore drop at the beginning of the chapter to the hypothetical implications of Odin and his possible role. You know, I love the conflict and further characterization of Odin, the madman. I love the look of that. I love the interactions between Buddha, Buggy Boy, Thor, everything. Like, once again, this chapter is just full of interactions. I've gone through the entire review explaining everything I liked, loved, and excited for. And I love that I do actually get a hint, a taste of more of this battle and the excitement that goes behind it. And I'm excited to see Soji start cooking, though I still am worried for my boy. I don't want him to get got again. I need Soji to win. However, if you somehow made it all the way to the end of this chonka-dunka of a video, please leave creative destruction. Leave creative destruction in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. If you leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you know myself on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the 41-minute live reaction to this very chapter, along with ad-free variations of all my videos, along with the opportunity to become a $25 patron or $25 member to order whatever video you want. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: O'Connor Plays, Greyhound, Akids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Teen Midgao, Querencia Tala, and Red Wolf 4765. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Panda Goat, Midnight Lord 21, Marcus, Kevin, Igneal, and Ehac1. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $7 members: Autumn's Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a hefty thank you to our $10 member, Banana Phone. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 patrons: Joaquin, Jermaine, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, China Doll 09. And another gargantuan, juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.